Hello, Flimsy Lunch Tray here with a first part of two parts of the series of video I'm going to do, and that is in regards to stats. So this is going to be stats part 1, and then we're going to have another video, stats part 2. Now, before I get into anything here, I do not want anyone to think that I'm trying to showcase or point to myself, exalt myself of saying that I'm a good player or something like that. This video is entirely to be reflective in how I view and look at stats and what they can tell you and how that can help you as a player overall. Because a lot of players may look at this and think not much of it, but in reality it tells you more about yourself as a player, what you might want to improve upon, what you're good at, or areas you can see in needing improvement. So I'm going to talk about several of those things in this video, and then the stats part 2 video will be more in-depth analysis and looking at your WoW stats numbers that Wargaming has set up that helps you. You can more specifically look through the battles you've done in a week, your recent win rate with previous battles, so on and so forth. But that'll be part 2. So today is more of an introductory, and it's looking at yourself as a player. So, and starting off here, we can see that you first have these 5 numbers across the top of the screen. You have total number of battles played, the ratio of battles won to the total number of battles played, the average amount of XP earned per battle, the most enemy warships destroyed in a battle, and your destruction ratio being the number of enemy ships destroyed by you against the number of times your ship was destroyed. So this is not negative, this is good. And then an important thing to keep in mind is also that we're looking at the statistics for random battles. And you can click on this here, or we can go to co-op battle, as we will see that the numbers change rather drastically in certain regards. We can see with ranked battle, it should be a way to choose seasons. Yeah, all seasons. Well, that's weird because I've totally played in ranked battle. Is this ranked? Old. Okay, that's what I have to go to. And then we can see here how we've performed. So, I'm pretty much I'm planning to only focus on random and co-op. Because once I tell you everything here in random, you'll see how it's pretty much the same in co-op, but how things will differ a bit in what they tell me as a player that I might not have known about myself until reviewing and looking at it. So you have 3 categories. You have battles played, which is 1,310. Your warships destroyed over the course of all these battles, 1,442, and the average results per battle. And then you're going to have your 4th column being most per battle. So in looking at victories, and it comes from this number, we can see that we have had 768 random battle victories with 541 random battles defeats and 1 draw. And then we can see how many of these battles in total we survived. So we can see, dividing this number by the number of times played, that I have just over a 60% chance of surviving by the end of a battle. So that's good. I'm not likely to die. I'm more favored to live by the time the battle comes to conclusion. We can also see the main battery gun accuracy, so percentage of hits by main battery shells, your torpedo accuracy, which honestly this number typically isn't very high for a lot of players because you will miss much more than you will ever hit. The contribution to capture, contribution to defense, which these are actually relatively, I would say, good numbers, because that's something that I play for and try to keep in mind. So you can see I'm more of a defensive player when it comes to retaining caps than I am being offensive or aggressive in taking capture or in capturing caps. Because that's something I've noticed about myself. I tend to play more as a defensive player than I do as an offensive player. Particularly, it depends on the ship, but in general, that's true. Onshore installations, damage caused onshore installations, which you don't have those in random, so 0. And then we can see the total number of damage caused to ships, which is over 78 million, in total amount of XP earned through random battles, which is over 2.2 million. Then you come over here with warships destroyed, and so that tells you by main battery guns, by secondary armament, by torpedoes, by aviation, by flooding and fire, and by ramming. So then we can look at through here and kind of get an idea of, and that will also relate to what type of ships you play. But we can see that I am not a player who will ram you very often in the randoms match. Because honestly, this number could be higher, and it's by ramming. I'm still figuring out for myself. Sometimes I've attempted more than just 12 rams, but sometimes you die before you're able to achieve said ram. So that's something to keep in mind about myself. We can see aircraft destroyed. Oh, satisfying. Over 6,300 aircraft destroyed. We can see the number of total number of warships I've spotted, which is almost similar to the number of battles played. Damage upon your spotting, the total damage your allies caused to enemy ships spotted by you. So that's good. And potential damage, and this is total damage potential from ammunition fired at your warship by enemy ships. So these are enemy ships firing at you. This is the potential damage. So I've actually almost broke a billion. Yeah, almost a billion. The next, you can see your average results per battle. That we have a positive rate of destroying warships average per battle. The average number of aircraft destroyed per battle is 4.8. Damage to ships average is going to be 59,721. Average XP is 1,700. Again, we're not going to see onshore installations because those exist in random battles. Warship spotted, so usually I will spot one ship at least in every battle. Damage upon your spotting is over 18, just over 18,000, and potential damage average as well. And these numbers, the potential damage will be more inflated because if you're a battleship, you're spotted for longer during a battle. Warships will be taking pot shots at you throughout the match. So if you're wanting to increase your potential damage, you typically want to do that in battleships. You don't want to do that in a cruiser or a carrier or a destroyer per se, because your health pool is limited in destroyer, and in carrier usually your ship is hiding in the back of the match. And then you can see your most per battle. So if you ever were curious about that of yourself, we can see mine is 7. And the last time that took place was in the Mayhem, and it was just, we lost that on points. I was the last player alive and killed 3 ships. It was 1 versus 4, but wasn't enough. We can see number of aircraft destroyed, which was in Massachusetts against 2 tier 6 aircraft carriers once I broke through an enemy line, destroying a Vladivostok in North Carolina. We can see damage to ships, most damage caused being Georgia holds that record right now. And then we can see XP, most XP earned in a battle, and this is base XP, and that is held by Massachusetts, which is, this is pretty high number. It's normally, we can see, okay, average XP per battle is 1,700 for me. So to more than double that is actually rather impressive, but it doesn't happen that often. I mean, usually you see 1,000 to 2,000s, but once you step into 3,000 and 4,000s, that's actually becoming a lot. Again, onshore installations don't exist in random battles. You can see the most warships I spotted was in a carrier, being 11, and the most damage caused upon my spotting was held by the gearing. And then your potential damage that took most in one battle, over 3.6 million, is held by the Iowa. And I guess I should, well, we'll talk about this a little bit more up here on top, but I want to talk about this now. So now we can see, let's start off with nations. So we can see that I am a pretty sore sucker for USA ships. I love playing U.S. Navy ships, American. I like playing that a lot. And we can see that the second highest would be the UK ships, and then Japanese ships. We have some European, some uh, USSR, and then there should be some German ships, some French ships, and some Pan-Asian ships, because I just started playing those very recently. Now, ideally, this is not fantastic. What really helps a player become really comprehensive in knowledge and understanding of the skills in battle is when they have played uh, more of these ships of different nations. Because with Pan-Asians, you have deep water torpedoes, so maybe unless you research that or you play the Pan-Asian destroyer line for yourself, you're like, oh, okay, so when I go up against this said ship, if I'm in a destroyer, he can't torpedo me. Or like, oh, like these European ships. So if I'm doing, the destroyers, they have really fast torpedoes. Then going with French ships, destroyers, like they typically have poor concealment. I'm just giving examples of just destroyer types versus talking about all the other types, where, the Japanese ships, which I'm playing a lot of destroyers right now, they're torpedo boats, very strongly so, where you have with the USA destroyers, they are more of a hybrid, being they can alternate their role between acting like torpedoes, stealth torpedoing, to gunboating, or then when you go with the Russian destroyers, they're much more gunboating, as well as the French, I would say. So it helps you, one as a player, grasp these ships playing them yourselves, but also when you go up against them in battle. Now granted, so we have this, and then if, for example, and watch how this changes when I go to co-op. So it doesn't change drastically, but you can see that the amount of UK ships increases, as well as some of like the German ships. Not a lot, but it does some. So that's helped me as well as a player. And then the types. Usually, everyone's always going to favor one line, and usually it's always the battleships being your most played. But then we can see that my destroyers are second most played, followed by cruisers, and then carriers. And I've been playing destroyers a lot more lately because I'm grinding a few different destroyer lines right now. And I like to take a break and not just be focusing on battleship play all the time, as it's nice to me to be able to be... When you play destroyers more often, you have to be very aware of what's happening in battle, map awareness, and what ships you're facing, because you're usually the first ship on your team's line to face them before other ships might, and to a certain extent. And then we can see the number of battles from this number of tiers played, or we can see pretty much mostly played tier 8. We have then followed by tier 9, and then tier 6, then tier 7, tier 5, tier 4, and then tier 10. Now, what this tells me about myself, because I also know this about myself, is that I'm focusing on grinding ships to get them to tier 10, and then I'm going back and then coming back up again. Where once you get tier 10, you don't have to necessarily grind anymore unless you're just trying to get some more, if you need some modules or upgrades on the ship. So then once I reach tier 10, I tend to jump back. Now, I've played tier 10 more in ranked, roughly. But that's mostly usually like the gearing that holds that record, as well as the Fletcher for some past seasons. So you can see that I, as a player, looking at my statistics as a whole, I've not played a lot. I've just been playing for, registered September 22nd. I'm still, even though I've been playing for over a year, I'm still in terms a rather new player. I'm still somewhat inexperienced because I haven't played all these different ship lines. I haven't played a ton of high tier matches, and then if you go into co-op, you'll see that number increases much more so, and how that shifts around. So I'm saying, like, kind of telling these things also will influence, your victory win percentage, your XP, your destruction ratio, all this. I plan to do a video at some point, just kind of, I've been playing for a year and having a 59% win rate is rather high. And that is mostly due to the fact that very early on, like I think in the spring, I began, or even in the winter last year, I sat down and I started writing them out. Like, okay, why do I keep dying in destroyers? I'm noticing that a lot more lately. Why is that happening? Well, it was because I was reaching tier 8, where you begin to run into more radars, and you can see a lot of players that they reach tier 8, and then all of a sudden they never go past because the ships you're facing, stronger carriers, and then radar just kind of can suck the fun out. So I had to why do I keep dying? I'm like, oh, I'm caught between this. Oh, like I have to go in and cap. That my team expects me of that. But then when I do, and I go into the cap and I die, my team yells at me for being a stupid destroyer player, and just yellowing in and dying. So then when I don't enter the cap immediately, my team yells at me for, why aren't you going into the cap? Why aren't you beginning to capture? Or why aren't you contesting it, right? And so that was something that played into that, as well as the radars. And so then once I reviewed that and wrote out things I was struggling with, then I was able to better work on to improving this, as well as playing both divisions has helped this number increase. But also, I don't always play divisions. I play solo matches as well, and just finding the groove of certain ships. So yes, so there's that. And then, and we go into co-op battles. We can see that things change quickly. So I've played a little bit more co-op battles than I have random battles. This is one. This tells me that, well, why is this? And that is because working on daily missions, daily combat missions, previously, well, it has been all like base XP you get in the game, and then it switched to, then it was damage, but then now it's back to base XP again. So when I say what I'm saying is the daily missions that reoccurring, it's this. And because you get these rewards, and I like getting my 20 seal a day. So usually these two will happen typically in co-op, and then these usually in ops or scenarios. So that's something that plays into that. And then we can see that it again shows you things overall, but then we can see that, oh, I play more tier 10 and tier 9 in co-op, and that's because when I get a ship at tier 10, I do not go into random battles as the first thing I do. Like, oh, I just got this ship, I'm going to go into random battles immediately. Some of those of you who follow the channel know that I like to, when I get a new ship, I like to start out in co-op. And I want to get a feel for the ship in co-op before I feel comfortable in going out into random battles. Whether that's shell dispersion, your accuracy, your rudder shift, the speed, or just different characteristics of the ship. So that's why you're going to see this number inflated higher in co-op than in randoms. And then we can see here that in co-op, surprisingly, destroyers are my most played because I know I can get the base XP I need quicker, followed by cruisers because I'm still toying with and getting used to cruisers in Warships as a whole. I feel like they're I much rather play battleships and destroyers because with cruisers I feel like I'm still getting the feel for, so I've been playing those more in co-op. And again, we kind of referenced like the different nations as well here. So again, this is information that helps you view to see where you're at with battles played. Usually, typically win in co-op. As you can see, we have 1,335 victories and 13 defeats, and we've had 2 draws, surprisingly. And then, XP, you don't earn as much XP as you would in random battles because of obvious reasons. It's easier to kill bots, destroy bots, and it happens pretty quick in co-op contributing to this versus random where you're not dealing with bots and most of the times, and it's mostly all players. But then you'll usually notice that your destruction ratio is typically higher than what it is in randoms. So the other thing you can do is you can see, and trying to wrap this up because this is getting longer than I anticipated, is of these number of battles played, you can go through and see what are your most played ships. Those of you who know me or haven't known me yet, Massachusetts is my weakness. Love the Massachusetts, and so I play her a lot. And you can scroll down and see what ships have you played the least in randoms. But then you can also change it by win rate. So actually, if you click on win rate again, then I'll flip it around so we can see what ship do I have the best chances of winning. Interesting, just the Costa, which just had that video go live on Friday. But if we look at these battles, I haven't played these ships a ton. And maybe I have like 5 or 6, 7 battles in Mitsuki, maybe 5 to 10 in Shenyang, and then maybe 10 in Acosta. So that's not a very fair representation of that win rate. Where then once we get down here, I've had a good handful into New York, and where we can see is like, okay, this is more in line of ships I've played more often. Not so much to Nelson and Odin, but particularly the Massachusetts and Georgia and Gearing. Played a lot of Gearing. So that helps you see that. You can also, let's see. Yeah, that's what I was wanting to show. You can see by type. Just reshuffles that. But particularly what I wanted to do was show you. You can click on a ship, and it'll show you the statistics for this ship. So then you can specifically see how you're doing with said ship. We can see that we've almost 400 battles played in randoms with Massachusetts. We got 63% win rate with her, which is better than my 59% win rate overall. So keeping that in mind, usually almost 1900 average amount XP earned, which is more than what it is in general. Again, 7 is still the most I've killed. And then destruction ratio is higher than what it is in general. So Massachusetts tends to be a really good ship for me because I know how to play her really well, and I feel like I have a really good handle on her, especially since I've actually reworked the captain skills a bit. And yeah, and again, you can just kind of look through these things if you're wishing to know more information about particular ship. So then I was actually wanting to go to, wanted to find Gearing. Just show you different ships. So you can see, yeah, we've only played 29 battles in Gearing, so still need to get more used to her. I mean, I've played her more in ranked, I've played her a lot in CoOp, so I have a pretty good feel for the ship, but maybe just not so much in a random battle setting. But when we do play her, this matches our overall victory percentage rate in random battles with ratio, and the most destroyed destruction ratio, and then you can find out your torpedo accuracy per certain ship as well. So yeah, so I think, yeah, and then with the ranked, with the old ones, kind of just shows you what have you experienced in victory, so you can kind of get a feel for things there as well. But this is, again, like I said, in wrapping this up, because we've gone too long, is going to be the first part. The second part is going to have the WoW Stats Numbers website. It's got a lot more specific details. It's going to tell me more about myself as a player, and it also can help you as a player see, tell you things about yourself that you may not have realized, because that happens to me when I check on that every so often, and I can deduce why is that happening with maybe when I'm playing destroyers less or playing battleships less. Is there there's some sort of event going on, so on and so forth. So I hope this video is helpful for you guys, and just generally looking at your statistics overall. Again, I'm not trying to draw attention to myself or showboat in any way about my win rate, because I know, usually around 50% is the average. But we'll talk more about that later on and what has helped me improve my win rate. But it just for you overall as a player, understanding yourself when you look at this, how you're doing, and that will this is one step to seeing as yourself as a player become a better player if you still wish to. So on that note, if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Comment if you're wanting to see something specific within the next statistics review video that I do, and subscribe if you want to see more. And if you have already subscribed, thanks so much. So until next time, take care.